more than, I think, 2 feet of snow here by the end of the week. So they got an adventure coming. My name is Nick Prenger. I am here in Omaha, Nebraska. We'll get rolling with the topic at hand. Some housekeeping items first. If you've been on a webinar with us before, you'll know this. Yes, it's being recorded. Yes, we will send you the recording so you can share it with your development office colleagues. If you have a question as we go along, make sure to hit the Q&A button on your screen. Use the chat. We love the chat to see where people are from and comments, and that's great. But if you have like a real question, like Nick, on that slide, you said this, what did it mean? Use the Q&A button, because then it actually pops up a little notification on my screen so I can make sure that we get to all of the questions in the next hour. So with that, let's jump right in. Why should you listen to us? Who the heck are we? What's this all about? I'll give you our background in one slide. Andrew and I work for a group called Prenger Solutions Group. We started it almost 5 years ago now. We provide fundraising consulting. We run annual appeals for our niche consulting practices in the Catholic diocesan world. So we run large $5, $10, $20 million a year annual appeals for Catholic dioceses. We also provide Razor's Edge database administration, some fundraising automation stuff. I'll share an example of that a little bit down the road. Basically, we are fundraising nerds. This is all that we do. And what we've committed to do is to build in public. So we are always trying out new things. And when we learn something, we host a little webinar like this and we share it with the world, and it leads to a lot of fun conversations. So that is who we are. There's 16 of us, I believe. And we work for all the great organizations you see on the screen and many, many more. So this is all that we do. We are the nerdiest people that you've ever met as it comes to fundraising. We also have a little product that we invented called AskGenius, which many of you I know use. When I see you here, the names on the list here. Andrew Menke runs our AskGenius service. We can talk about what that looks like as well. But that is not the focus today. The focus today is to talk about our research into setting the best ask amounts. How do you set the right ask amounts for your donors? Some of the areas that we've covered already, I mentioned that we like to build in public. We have hosted, I don't know, Andrew, what does it feel like? 1,000 webinars, it feels like. It's
maybe more, I don't know.
It's probably like 15 or 20, but it's so it feels like a lot. We're rethinking our commitment to spend so much time putting these webinars together, but we love doing it. So we've done webinars on writing the world's best fundraising letter based on all of our A/B testing and what works and what doesn't. Pledge card design, how to use email for fundraising, how to use social media for fundraising. We've talked about donation pages and why your donation pages might be leaving money on the table. Donor personas, direct mail strategies, fun stuff, and things you never knew you needed to know about how the U.S. Postal Service works and some of their benefits. Year-end giving. All of that to say, here's where we are today. If you are here and any of that interests you, we can share links to previous webinars. It's all public, it's all out there. But today, you are in the right place if you are looking to understand, how do I set the perfect ask amounts, excuse me, for your fundraising appeal? What does the research say? Nick and Andrew and your team, what have you guys learned? What are some good tips and advice? That is what we're talking about today. The reason we know a thing or two about this is because clients pay us a ton of money to run their appeals, and it is really important to us that we do a good job. So we're going to share with you everything we know. The place to start when we're talking about ask strings and ask amounts is understanding your donor personas. And what we have found in our consulting practice is that there are basically 6 types of donors that give to our annual appeals. Okay, we're going to talk briefly about each one of them, because we have to have this in mind as we later get into the science of setting the ask amounts, because it depends on which donor you're talking about. So we'll start. We've got our good friend Steady Eddie. He has been giving $100 every single year to your annual appeal, whether it's an annual fund, whether you're a hospital foundation doing quarterly mailings, whatever it might be that fits your nonprofit. Here's what we know about Steady Eddie. You can ask him for more, but you will not get it. So we're going to start with a bang here with me just depressing the heck out of everybody and saying, if you have a donor who's been giving you $100 year after year, you are not going to get any more. But if you ask for less, you might get it. Okay. So Steady Eddie, he is already locked in. Once they've been giving for 3 or 4 years at the same amount, it is incredibly difficult to pry them up, to lever them up the ladder at all. Okay. So recognize that. First thing we need to know about donor personas. First gift, Fran, didn't give for a long time. And then the previous year, She gave $20. Okay. So what do we know about that? She just made her first gift in 2020. So we're assuming that we're running the 2021 appeal here. That's the first time that we did all this research. The year before she gave $20. What we know about first gift Fran is that this is a huge opportunity for an increased giving to the appeal. If we focus on making that first gift a delightful giving experience, then this is the second best opportunity that you have to increase giving to your nonprofit. Okay, so the goal here is to ask for a large increase in year 2, and we're going to talk about exactly how large you can ask for in a little bit. Mr. Menke will get into the nitty gritty of the numbers behind it. But if someone is making their first gift last year, overwhelm them with love and attention, tell them how great they are, and then ask them for a really big gift in year 2, and you will get it. Campaign Kathy, she gave a little bit to the appeal, and then she made a big campaign gift, and then the giving to the annual fund stopped after that. What is the best advice for Campaign Kathy? Make sure you're acknowledging that campaign gift when you send her stuff for the annual fund, right? Or even if it's a special event or a gala, she wants to know when she reads your letter that you know who she is, that you know that she made a big giant gift to your capital campaign. So reference that, thank her for her generosity. Of course, focus on in-person visits, and then focus on, once that pledge is complete, inviting her back over to the annual fund. Checkbox Charlie, this is the donor, honestly, that I think we think of the most. When we think of our annual fund donors, we're thinking of Checkbox Charlie, and he's been given steadily, right? $50, 55, 61, 67, small increases year after year. The strategy for him is just ask for a reasonable increase and he will give it. Okay. If you ask for the right amount in that zone of what seems like a reasonable increase, he will give it. The best strategy for Charlie, give him a hug for being the wonderful, perfect donor that we all want when we're fundraising professionals. We want people to give consistently. Infrequent Earl, in our experience, is maybe a small business owner. It might be a farmer if you're here in the Midwest. What we find about him is that he gives generously, right? Gifts of $1,000 or $1,500, maybe $2,000 or so, but he doesn't give every single year. He is a busy guy. He doesn't wake up in the morning thinking about your nonprofit. But if you hit him at the right time, right? If you invite him at a time when he has, he's doing his mail, he'll write you a check, right? If you give him a phone call, he will donate, but he's not making it a priority. The best strategy, this is the single best opportunity for increased giving to your appeal, is finding the infrequent donors and inviting them through letters, and then you can even automate some live bunts and side-bunt follow-up. We can talk about that if you'd like. But this is the biggest. So the second biggest opportunity you have is first gift Fran, any first-time donor. The biggest opportunity you have is to look at infrequent Earl and invite him to give to the appeal. The biggest mistake we see nonprofits doing is they treat him like a non-donor, because a lot of nonprofits, when we go to send out our direct mail appeals, we look at past giving and maybe it looks like he gave nothing last year. Maybe we look back 2 years. Many of them don't, but many nonprofits just look back a year, maybe 2 years, and they see zeros. So they're going to ask him for $20, which is a huge mistake. You've got to look back farther and recognize that him not giving in the last year or two does not mean he doesn't care about your nonprofit. It means that he fits into this donor archetype of infrequent Earl, who will give, but he just doesn't prioritize it, and you're going to miss him a couple of years. Okay, so it's important that you dig deep into his giving history. The final donor that we find in all of our appeals that we run across the country, let's call her Hidden Gem Helen. She looks like every other normal donor. She's been given $100. Maybe it fluctuates here and there. And then suddenly you realize when you're driving down the street that one of the medical buildings is named after Helen. And you think, oh my goodness, I had no idea she was giving to us. What do you do in this case? The best strategy, stop sending her ask strings. Don't go play this webinar and learn what ask amounts to ask her, because it doesn't matter. Stop sending her ask strings. Stop sending her direct mail unless you're telling her how great she is. Start reaching out in person, right? Meet her for coffee, cultivate her, treat her like the major donor that she is. Okay. That is important to start. So these are the donor personas, and we're going to call back on these as we get into the research because it matters, right? Some strategies apply to some donor personas. I would love to know from folks if your donors also fall into these archetypes, or if you think that you might have different donors. I would wager that it's going to be pretty darn similar to what we find in our work. Okay. Pledge card research. So we've talked about sort of the mushy qualitative stuff, understanding your donors. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. What does the science say? And why do we do what we do in setting ask amounts? Andrew, when did we do this big pledge card research project? Time is a flat circle to me. It all.
Yeah, I think think it was in 2020 or just after. I think the later part of 2020 is when we started it.
Yeah, feels like yesterday and it feels like 10 years ago, all at the same time. So what we did was we, like we do in all areas, whether it's writing letters, designing donation pages, we did a huge research project because we want to understand what are the levers here, what are the moving pieces. So we invited in our niche, again, as consultants, we work with Catholic dioceses, as trainers and AskGenius who work with nonprofits all across the country in all different verticals. But our niche for consulting was Catholic dioceses. So we invited all of them to give us their pledge card, and more than 100 did. So we had like 70% of all the dioceses in the country gave us their pledge card. They gave us the data behind it. They told us how they set ask strings, and then they gave us the data with no personal information, of course, on donors, but they gave us the data to show what happened when they set their ask amounts and what the results were. And we were able to use that to learn some really fun stuff, right? So the first thing that we learned was that ask amounts are really important. The second thing we learned is that nobody agrees on what to call ask amounts. We've been calling them ask strings. Some people call them gift amounts. Some people call them ask arrays, gift arrays, bump tables. What am I missing, Andrew? Anything else? There's like 30 names for these things.
Yeah, it's some variety of all of those. It's they mix and match them. So yeah, we use ask strings. That's what we call them. That's how we refer to them.
We'll call them ask strings. Let's have everybody here can hold hands and agree that from now on we're only going to call these things ask strings because it decomplicates our life. So what we learned in going through all of these pledge cards is that there's two kinds of pledge cards. And some of the folks that have been on webinars before have heard this before, so bear with me for 30 seconds. I just need to make sure we're all on the same page as we go through this. The first kind of pledge card is an open-ended pledge card, and it looks like this, where you are sending something to the donor and you're inviting them to write in that amount. So you're giving them the freedom to write in $20 or $100 or $10,000. They're going to write it in on a blank line. Okay, so that's the first version of a pledge card that nonprofits use. The second version is a pledge card with ask amounts on it. Excuse me, it looks a little bit something like this. Maybe not as detailed, but it has those amounts pre-written, dropped in there for the donor, so that all the donor has to do is check a box, right? They can still write in the gift if they want, but we're presenting them with an ask string so they can check a box on how they want to give. What we found in poring over the data and then experimenting with our own clients is we wanted to know, how do we set the perfect amounts and which card works better for which group? There's three ways that people set ask amounts and three ways that they use those pledge cards, right? So method one is they send everybody the same pledge card, okay? Method two is they create high, medium, and low versions of the pledge card. So in method one, everybody's getting the exact same ask amount. Method two, you might have donors who are getting, an ask string of 25, 50, 100, and then another string that's starting at 200, another string that might be starting at 1,000 or something. And then the final group, and this is about a third, of nonprofits have some sort of a formula, right? And they say, hey, we want to ask everyone for 10% more than they gave the prior year. And it's almost always that. Andrew, is that right? Whenever somebody has an algorithm, is it almost always 10% more?
It's always, 10% more of either their last appeals gift or their last gift to the organization.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's something magical about that nonprofits, sometimes somebody said ask for 10% more. What frustrated us to learn this? So we learned that this is how people are setting ask amounts. This is how they're using pledge cards. It frustrated us because we spend so much time as nonprofits and as consultants getting data on our donors, right? And taking that data and putting it into Razor's Edge or Virtuous or Salesforce or Bloomerang or whatever it is that we're using. But none of those data points were being used by nonprofits to set ask amounts, right? So all of that data sitting inside of your system, what they gave last year, whether they're a campaign donor, what the target wealth research says, and it was painstakingly organized inside the donor database. And then we're watching nonprofits send their direct mail and they're just completely divorced from one another, right? That data is not used to set ask amounts. So what we did, Andrew and I, was we had a brilliant, stupid idea, both at the same time. We said, what would happen if we use all of those data points to set custom ask amounts for every household? So that's how we got involved in this topic of setting ask amounts. We said, I don't know if I'd do it again. If we had to do it all over again, it's a lot of work. But we said we are going to perfect this. We are going to use all the data at our disposal. And we're going to come up with what is the best way to ask every donor for a gift. What is the best ask string for each donor? So the way we did that was we went into our client databases and we exported everything. Most of our clients use Razor's Edge, which is the case, I imagine, with a lot of the folks on the call here today. So we exported the list of all donors that we're going to invite to give to their annual appeal. So whether it's 50,000 or 100,000 households, we put it into Excel. And then Andrew and I, begrudgingly, well, we were eager at first, and then as the days wore on, we got less excited about this project. We went through these line by line, and we looked at what did the donor give last year, and then we set an ask string based on last year's gift. And then we reshuffled the spreadsheet and reordered it, and we said, okay, what did they give 2 years ago? And then we use that data to adjust the ask and tweak it. And then we'd say, okay, but let's go, what did they give to the special events? And we'd organize it by special events, and then we would go and change the ask string, and we do layer after layer after layer. As you can imagine, because all of you are smarter than we are, this was the stupidest thing that we could have promised to do because it took forever. I mean, we had no idea how long this would take to do it the right way, but we did it. We overpromised. Andrew almost quit like 3 or 4 times. I almost quit like 100 times.
It was fine, Nick, when you're saying, okay, let's just look at the last 3 years of giving, and then you're like, well, let's look at the capital campaign, and then let's throw in wealth research. So then it was
what does wealth research say on this? Because there's never an end to the data. There's always one more data point that you could pull on and be like, you know what, it'd be interesting to see what this would do. But sometimes the only way out is to like dig farther in, right? So we did it. We came out the other side. Good news, bad news. So the bad news is it was awful. It was terrible. It took forever. The good news is we learned so much about how to set ask amounts. But we did our own research. We learned what factors really impact how much a donor gives, and we use that to build a tool called AskGenius. And that's over here, right? If you want to know about AskGenius, you can ask us about it later, and we'll put up a little poll. But what we're going to get into now is all of the research that went into building AskGenius so that you can do this on your own. If you have the time, you can recreate everything that we've done. So we're going to talk about the practical application of all the research that we did. So I'm going to do, let's consider this sort of lightning round format, Menke. I'm going to go through the things that we learned. If we had to boil it down, all of the pain and suffering, and the blood and the sweat and the tears, what are the things that we learned? Here's the stuff that all these nonprofits on the line here today can take away. We'll start at the very beginning. You cannot ask everyone for the same ask amount. Okay, so learning number one, you cannot ask everyone for the same ask amount. Remember, this is one of the 3 methods that nonprofits were using. About a third of nonprofits send the exact same pledge card to everybody. What we found in our research is when you do that, so you send all donors, typically the ask string would look something like this. This is a very vanilla standard ask string. Starts at $100, goes up to $500. Contrast with what we would consider to be personalized ask amounts, when you might invite donor A to give starting at $25 on all the way up, right? So these are just 4 examples. Of course, we would have thousands of examples if we're using AskGenius. What we found, if you invite everybody to give this on the same pledge card, you're going to see an average increase of about 4% to your average gift, right? And that is basically inflation. So it's not bad, right? You're not moving in the wrong direction. So it's okay. You can be happy with that. When you start personalizing those ask amounts to your donors so that it's the right fit, it's in that Goldilocks zone of not too high, not too low, you will see an average increase of 29%. So this is the biggest lift that I can promise you. If you're a nonprofit that right now is sending out direct mail and you have just generalized pledge cards and everyone's getting the same ask amount, now is the time to move to a personalized ask string, because you will see the biggest lift of everyone. If you're already setting custom ask amounts, that's fantastic. We're going to give you some advice on how to do it better. But if you're right now sending everybody the same ask amount, it is a huge increase and you can only get it once. So go out, grab it this year. The research shows you're going to raise a lot more. Okay, so stop asking everybody for the exact same amount. We'll start there. It's nice and simple. Mr. Menke, what about the second option that people do? We learned that you can't ask everybody for that 10% increase, right? So here's what we learned there. And I will invite Andrew to weigh in because he is much better with numbers than I am. We have a sampling of donors on the screen. So this is a hypothetical donor that gave $20, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. Everyone's favorite formula. They say, oh, Nick, we're not asking everybody for the same amount. We've got an algorithm. And the algorithm is take their last gift and multiply it times 1.1. Here's what that looks like. $20 gift gets invited to give $22. $100 gift gets invited to 110, on and on. This is what that 10% formula yields for you if you're sending out, whether you're putting the ask amount in the letter or you're just sending them a pledge card with these amounts sort of floating as variable text. What we have found, in our opinion, and I would argue that there's not two people on earth that know more about this exact topic of setting ask amounts for nonprofits than Andrew and myself. Here's what we think of that result. $22 is way too low. $110 for this donor is way too low. $550 is probably too low. The $1,100 honestly might be okay, but it's a weird number, and you're not going to want to send someone, asking for $1,100. The $5,500 is possibly okay. Excuse me. So this is the result of what it looks like if you just apply that 10% algorithm, increase their last gift by 10%. Here's what we would do. And reminder, we are recording this and we will send out the slides, so you don't need to furiously scribble down these numbers. But this is the answer to the question of, okay, Smarty Pants, Nick and Andrew, what would you do with these donors? Here's what we would do. We'll give you a moderate ask increase and we'll give you an aggressive but still reasonable ask increase. The $20 donor you can invite between 100 and 250, no problem. On and on. The $100 donor goes up to 250. That $1,000 donor, we're going to ask somewhere in the area of 1,100, but we're going to make it a not weird number. We're going to ask them for 1,250. Okay, and that $5,000 donor. What does this look like in terms of percentage increase? It's shocking, right? 400% increase to a more than 1,000% increase with the first donors, 150 to 400. The only group that we are increasing by 10% and 10% alone is that $5,000 donor. So Andrew, what is your thought on this? You live in these numbers now. Does this resonate with you? What do we need to tell folks?
Yeah, it does. And one thing to keep in mind is you get what you ask for. So you look at 10%. If you ask for 10% across the board, okay, you might get some money in return. What was it? About a 4% average increase.
Yeah, 4.3.
Then look at these numbers. 400%, 150%. All that adds up to quite a bit more. So you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're just asking for a 10% increase. If you're asking for more, quite a bit more, you're getting so much money in return. So it's just, basic math.
Yes.
You get what you ask for. Some cases, 10% might be fine. It's usually with your high-end donors. But your lower donors, you can ask for more, and don't be afraid to do so.
And what I find interesting, so when we reflect on this, like as Andrew said, like the folks that are using an algorithm, it's almost always, if not every single time, asking for 10% more. I think it reflects a bit of a bias in our heads, certainly in mine, is that when I'm thinking of that 10% ask, I'm probably thinking of that $5,000 donor, right? I'm thinking of a large donor, I'm thinking of a faithful donor, and I'm trying to think, okay, maybe $500 isn't appropriate. I'm absolutely not thinking of a $20 donor. I realize how silly this is, right? To ask someone for $22 instead of 20. Likewise, 500. So I'm assuming that also two things. I'm thinking of the higher end donors and not the lower end donors, but I'm also making a false assumption that everybody is giving near their capacity, right? A 10% increase is basically saying, hey, let's get a little bit ahead of inflation, and that's it. And the truth is, very few, if any, donors are giving it capacity to your organization, right? They're writing you a lot of $100 token, gifts, when in reality they could give $500. They can give $1,000 if we invite them. And we'll talk about how to invite them in a minute. But this chart, I just want everyone to. This is the what everybody asked for. Like, what can you increase? What's reasonable? This is our best advice to you from having done this thousands of times for a whole lot of direct mail appeals.
Okay. One last thing I'm going to throw in there. So there are some special cases in there for each donor. So you go back to the donor persona. So you have your steady eddies that are consistently giving $20 per year. And that based off of their giving history. Bumping them up to 400% more, 1,000% more, you might not want to. You might want to just steadily increase his giving over the years. So there are special cases here and there, but overall, I say overwhelming, you can ask for more, especially those low-end donors. Definitely more than the 10%.
Yep. Yep. And that's why, so this is why it gets complicated, right? Because you have, this is based on the numbers on what people can give and what can increase them. But then you have to overlay this against the donor personas, as Andrew was saying. And if someone's steady Eddie's been given $100 year after year, then you know that that's not the case, that you're not going to be able to, dramatically increase that. So, okay, let's keep going with the lessons that we learned for folks. As always, if you have questions, hit the Q&A button, make sure it pops up on the screen for Andrew and I. The other thing that we learned, and this goes on with what we just talked about, don't assume that a low gift means low capacity. And we find this a lot in our organizations that we work with. Again, we've got a consulting side of the house and the software side of the house. Andrew and I are on the software side. But on the consulting side, we work with a lot of Catholic dioceses, and they'll run annual appeals, and they'll get a gift in for $20 or $50. And they're like, oh my goodness, that's so great. That's, their capacity. They're given, all that they can. And it is so wrong, right? 90% of the time, that's not what's happening. It's actually it's a dipping their toe in the water gift, not a this is my last $20, that I can possibly give gift. So to illustrate this point, 2 donors, they each give $100. To a nonprofit, if you're just looking at the spreadsheet or you're looking at the donor database, they look exactly the same on the surface. But in reality, one of these is a gift, as we talked about. This is a dipping the toe in the water $100. This is a donor that has the capacity to give you $1,000 or $5,000 if you do it right, if you recognize who they are, if you do your research and you set the right ask amounts. And the donor on the right is giving it capacity. They're not going to increase it quite a bit. And what's makes our job challenging is that these 2 folks can look exactly the same until you really dig into it. Those donors that are both giving $100 look exactly the same until you do the research, look behind the scenes. Andrew, I should have done a poll to see if people know who's on the screen here.
Maybe in the chat, if someone knows.
If you know who it is in the chat, now's your time before I advance. One of them is the finest comedic mind of our generation. Who is the other guy? Faith Murray is asking everyone's. Oh, well done.
There we go. Sarah got it. Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer. I don't know his name either.
I don't either. I just know it's the drummer. What does that say? But it's fascinating. So the 2, it's not Flea, it's the other one. So they were on, what is it? Jimmy Fallon or something like that. They had like a drum off, and it was a fantastic episode. I just always look for a way to get Will Ferrell into any of our presentations. But it is shocking how close these 2 look alike. So it's a great example of donors. Okay. What else do we need to tell them? First-time donors. First-time donors to your organization are everything. Stop what you're doing right now and assess what is your organization doing to make the first giving experience a delight. Because I guarantee you, you're not doing enough. Our research shows this time and time and time and time again. We're talking about that first gift, Fran, who we talked about in the donor personas. As we shared, this is the huge opportunity for increased giving to the appeal. I worked in nonprofits for 20 years before this point really kind of galvanized in my head. I think I was like a lot of nonprofits, Andrew, in that I always thought about how are we asking for money, right? And that's all that's not all I cared about, but that's what my job was, inviting people to support this organization. And what I was neglecting was the other 9 months of the year when I could be cultivating and telling people how great they are and like preparing ahead for the next time I was going to ask for money. So I did such a poor job, thinking about donors during the off season, if you can use that term. And what our research shows over and over again when we track where the increases are coming from, they're coming from Fran when she makes that first gift, and then you acknowledge her as a first-time donor. When you tell her, hey, I think you just made a gift to the appeal, for the first time. Here's who I am. Here's how we're going to use your gift. If you have any questions, let me know.
Make those first-time givers heroes of your organization. That's what you got to do. Don't let them fall into steady Eddie. Giving the same amount year after year. Make that person the hero, and then you can ask for even more. You can ask for that 400% increase that next year.
Yes, I love that. That's the way to think about it. Don't let them calcify into steady Eddie. You run to the mailbox every day when those gifts come in and search for people that it's their first gift, and then make it your mission in life to make it a great giving experience. Here's what we're doing for a lot of our clients on the consulting side. Everybody's heard about automation and you've heard about AI. It's the big buzzword. Here's a practical application of where technology is going. A couple years back, Razor's Edge, short version of all of this, as always. If you have questions, hit the Q&A button. We'll get into more detail. A couple of years ago, Razor's Edge opened up a certified connection to a program called Microsoft Power Automate. What Power Automate can do is connect to your email, whether it's Outlook or Gmail. So what this means is that you can now, inside of Outlook or inside of Gmail, you can trigger emails to people based on things that happen inside of Razor's Edge or inside of your donor management system. What we are doing on the consulting side is something that you should all be doing at your own nonprofits. We have it so that if we're working with a client, the development director opens up his or her laptop in the morning, every morning, there are emails already drafted to donors based on something that happened inside of their donor database. So, and folks, this is where the future is going. This, if you're not already thinking about this, you should be. Here's what's happening. 10 draft emails every single morning. The development director just has to look at it, open it up, and if they like what they see, that's great. If they don't recognize a donor, if the message just seems weird, they delete it, right? No skin off their back. They didn't take the time to draft that email. They just let an automation do it for them. If they know the person, so in this case, maybe I know John, I can add a little note at the top, say, hey, John, it was great seeing you at the Creighton basketball game last weekend. And then I let the rest of the message go and I click send. This is happening already at large nonprofits. We have rolled it out to our clients and we've continued to be impressed by the results that we're getting. We worked with a client in Denver that's raised $100,000 just by setting up some automations here to chase Libunts and Cybunts, right, who hadn't given recently. This is incredibly mind-blowing stuff. I mean, I don't know how to be any more dramatic about it because it's not over dramatic. Like, this is a big deal. It is a huge shift in how the nonprofit fundraising world is looking. Here's what we do, and I'll give folks a chance if they want to know more about this. Of course, we can. I think we even have some webinars coming up on this topic, don't we, Andrew?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, in a couple of months we have one.
April, I think we're talking about automation.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'm a development director. I've set up these automations. I open up my email draft folder. This is in Outlook every day, and I have these emails written. It's somebody's birthday. Somebody just made their 20th gift. Randy just joined a new giving tier. Cheryl is the first-time donor, so I am sending her a personal, heartfelt email from me, from a real person. This is not an automated newsletter that goes out. This is not a postcard. This is from an actual live, real person coming from their Outlook saying, hey, I think that your gift that just came in, I think you're a first-time donor. Let me introduce myself. Let me tell you how great it is and how much I appreciate you. So automation is critical for something like this. We're talking about the topic of showing donor love to new donors. If you want to know more about automation, I'm going to give folks a chance here. So we're going to move on and go back to talk about ask strings, but I know that this topic is of interest to a lot of folks. So I'm going to let this roll for 10 seconds here. If you want to know more, answer the poll on the screen and we'll make sure to send you an email to make sure that you come to our next webinar and we can even start up a conversation. I'm happy to share samples of what we're building out there. So what is more background on this? We build this automation inside of Razor's Edge using a Microsoft program called Power Automate. There's a million other ways that you can do it if you're on Salesforce or something else, but we're happy to share our results with you and everything else. Okay. So automation, thank you for that. Wealth research. Menke, tell us about what do we need to know about wealth research? So whether it's target analytics or donor search or wealth engine or iWave, walk us through what we're looking at on the screen.
It's nice to have.
It is.
It's helpful. It's a helpful piece of information to have on the side. I mean, we'll talk about it, but I would probably never use this information literally. But it definitely helps to guide you in what to ask your donor for. Right.
So on the screen here, that's exactly right. And I would agree with that. All wealth services are going to give you, it used to be they give you at least one thing, which is here's all the wealth that we found for this person, which is going to be mostly tied up in their home value and then maybe some publicly traded stocks if they're a large enough investor or if they're on the board of a publicly traded company. It's going to give you a number of here's all the wealth we can tie to, to John Smith here. And they've gotten better. And now many of the organizations are also saying, hey, here's an ask amount. So based on that, here's what you might be able to ask them next. And it's just a math problem. It's all the wealth found with this person, which is, again, mostly house value or multiple house values. And then you take it times X%, and they give you a next ask amount, which is good. But here's what we mean when we say that is good as an indicator. That's to contrast that with saying that it's good as something that you can take as gospel and actually mail out to folks. Because in this example, where they're saying that this donor, the next ask amount could be $5,000 or so. That's great, but think about how that changes and what that looks like based on what it's only helpful if you also know the other factors, right? So what did this person give to the appeal last year? If they gave $7,500, then that, well, that indicator is affirming, I guess, that you're on the right track, but you're not going to ask for $5,000. If they gave nothing to last year's appeal, Andrew, what could you, if someone hasn't donated to your last appeal, they give $0, what would you do with this information about $5,000?
I would throw it away.
You can't ask for that, right? You can't take
ask for
something from 0 to
5,000.
5,000.
No, not for an entry level gift.
Yeah.
Unless
But what
you meet
about,
with that person and get to know them and cultivate
right?
that
What,
relationship.
but is it helpful? So if a donor's been giving you, let's say, $100 last year, and then you have an indicator that they says, oh, they could give 5,000.
Yeah,
How do you use that information?
that gives you permission to ask for $400, $450, for $500. So it definitely gives you permission to increase your ask amount significantly. But you definitely need to be careful not to go all the way up and put all your chips in on that wealth research ask amount.
Yep, well said. I struggle with the best way to share this clearly, like how it is we look at it. Maybe it's we don't look at wealth screening as gospel. We don't look at it as, you can never take that amount they're giving you and drop it into a letter or a pledge card. We look at it more of like a red, yellow, green light, right? Like if it's if you get a good target analytics score that says they can give a certain amount, that gives us the green light then, based on their history, based on all the other factors that are at play here, to be aggressive with the ask amount. But based on the history, if they've never given, then it doesn't matter, right? You're not gonna certainly go out and ask somebody just for what the wealth screen says. So that's what I'm trying to get across when we say wealth screen is a good indicator, and it's useful and it's helpful. Like don't get me wrong, we're big fans of wealth research. What we found in building AskGenius and doing all the research on this was, it's like wealth research got us to the 5-yard line, and we needed to build something to take us that last 5 yards, right? We needed something to help operationalize that data, because for a lot of the folks that are on the line, your job is to send out direct mail, 5,000 pieces or 100,000 pieces, and you need something that can turn that wealth research number into something that you can actually drop into a pledge card. So that's how we look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really quick on that.
Yeah.
We're not belittling wealth research at all. I think Nick made that clear.
We love wealth research.
A lot of organizations use it for only capital campaigns. They might take, their top 200, run them through a wealth research engine and get that information. But you can use that for annual appeals and for your direct mailings. Again, as an indicator of wealth, I wouldn't take it literally.
I don't know anyone that would have success, and I don't even know if Blackwood intends it to take it literally, or if Wealth Engine does. I guess maybe they do in some sense, but just remember, it's still just a math problem, right? It's how much wealth could you scrape from the internet based on LexisNexis and county assessor reports, multiplied by a certain number. They're getting better in time, but it's just an indicator. Okay. Something we found to be true, maybe all the time. But Andrew, what do you think? Are organizations asking for too much or too little?
Too little.
Did I just catch you reading the chat or the Q&A or something? I feel like I just busted you. All right. So tell me about this. What do you, Andrew has looked through more ask amounts than any human on earth in the last 2.5 years here. Tell me, how bad is it? How bad is it? Are people really asking? Are they in the ballpark? Are they asking for way too little? What's going on?
There's a variety of different ways that organizations are asking. So yes, you'll a lot of times see the 10% increase across the board, which tends to be too little. Other times people are asking for the same amount they gave last year, which again, you fall into the camp of you're asking for too little. So yeah, across the board, I see organizations for the most part are asking for way less than they can be asking for.
Yeah. Well said. And if you're going to focus on this, again, anybody that you're going to ask for $5,000 or more, you need to care about. You as the development director or annual fund manager, you got to care about those folks and make sure you're not alienating anybody and you're not going to stretch those top donors. For everybody below that amount, let me just tell you, you're asking for too little. Invite them to make a larger gift and they will. How about the mechanics of this? I know this is something you're passionate about, Andrew. Two things we get asked all the time. Should you include the ask amount in the letter? And should you include the prior gift in the letter? Let's start with the ask amount in the letter. What's the answer? Should you include the specific amount in the letter?
No. And you popped that up before I answered. The answer is no, but there is an exception. I don't know if do you have a slide for the exception?
I do have an exception. So
Okay.
here's the reason we say no. And this goes against Andrew and I also have been, before we started PSG, we were campaign consultants. So we ran capital campaigns all over the country. And this goes against everything we were taught, right? It was like, send a letter, include the specific ask amount in the letter. What we have found from actually doing the research on this is that the best case for direct mail appeal is you have a really well-written letter. And we actually have a whole webinar on the topic of that, and we can share that in the chat. When you ask for a specific amount, many times it breaks the spell of that letter. If you're doing your job with a letter and you're telling a story, the donor's nodding his head, you're really, casting a spell and they're feeling a part of it, you include that specific amount and it breaks the spell. The better way that we found is to let the ask strings in the pledge card do the lifting for you. It's not reasonable to assume if you're reading a letter from a nonprofit and it's from the executive director and it's emotional and it's tugging at the heartstrings, it feels weird to then have a specific amount of, would you give $1,100 this year? Let it happen subconsciously through the ask strings in the pledge card itself. The exception, Andrew, what's the exception here?
So if it's a meaningful ask amount, so if it's, like that example, please feed a child for $20 a week, or your $100 gift can help these students with X, Y, Z, something like that. That's the exception.
Yep.
Otherwise, like Nick said, it's almost like you go from heartfelt, a conversation with the donor into robot mode, where you're all of a sudden asking, well, I'm inviting you to give $3,250. It's weird. It doesn't make sense in the letter.
Yes. The algorithms work for the pledge card. Don't cram them into the letter. It feels weird. What about prior gift amounts? What have we learned on this?
Stay away from them.
Yes. I love it. I love it. All right. So this is the case where you've had the donor, they've been given $100. Should you put it in a letter? The reason we say it depends is that depends what you want to do, right? If you want to anchor them to the same gift, fine. That's great. If you want them to get, if you're happy with Steady Eddie giving $100 or you're resigned to it, you can include it in there and they will give you that exact same amount again. It's dangerous if your data isn't accurate. And this is where we're playing defense a little bit. We're being cautious. Think of you're running the annual appeal. In 1 year, the husband gives the gift. The next year, the spouse gives a gift, and maybe you didn't catch it. Like, you're really letting it all hang out there if you're putting their previous gift in a letter, and you're opening yourself up to potentially someone saying, well, that doesn't look right, or you missed my gift, or I gave from the, through PSG instead of from Nick and Holly last year. So we know that makes us nervous, makes a lot of clients nervous. It also makes it tough to ask for an increase, right? It makes it very conspicuous. If you include, hey, thank you for your gift of $100 last year, it's really hard to then ask them for $500 or $1,000, almost impossible. And we measure this, and it just doesn't work. It will depress giving. You can do all the right things on your ask strings in the pledge card, but if you put last year's gift right there, you're going to depress giving. Okay.
Yeah, and it gives them permission to give what they gave last year.
Yep.
So if they gave $100, even if you only ask for $120, if that's your first ask amount in your ask string, they have permission to give the $100 again, because you thank them for it, you're grateful for it, so they can give that amount again.
Yep. And this is where, again, this is why it gets so complicated, because this is just the algorithm and the math and the letters, and then you look at the donor personas, and no matter what you do, Steady Eddie is going to give his $100 either way. So in one sense, if you have done your segmenting and you know that, okay, this letter is going to Steady Eddie, fine, include last year's gift. It's what you're going to give. That's great. But if this is a first gift Fran, or if this is an infrequent Earl, you do not want to anchor them to anything low. Okay. A very practical, technical thing that we've banged our head against the wall with. We've learned that monthly gifts, right, are different than monthly installments. And this is something we've learned in working with clients. There's really two ways on annual funds that here we're talking about pledges and monthly giving. So there's monthly gifts, and then there's monthly installments. Here's what we're talking about. This is a pledge card, a very well-designed pledge card for a client. And you'll see that it's asking them, it's got a little number 1 here. Do you want to make a monthly gift, right? And they can mark off what amount, or do you want to make a one-time gift? This is what we would consider to be asking somebody to make a monthly gift. And we'll get into the annual recurring stuff in a minute. But you'll notice that these two are not really, they're not connected to each other. They're not installments. They are truly separate asks. The donor is going to make that decision. Am I a monthly donor or am I a one-time gift donor? Contrast that with a pledge card that looks like this. These are not monthly asks. These are installment payments. And it is really important that if your pledge card is set up this way, asking for pledges and then offering the 10 payments, it's really, really important that those numbers add up. Menke, I mean, how much heartburn has this given us over the last 2 years?
And you'll hear from a couple donors. So if they don't add up, you're going to get a message. So it's important. If the language you use is very important in these cards.
Yep. And when you're setting ask amounts, it's critical to know from the outset, if I'm offering a donor annual amounts and monthly amounts, you need to know, is that a true monthly ask or is that an installment of the annual amount? And if so, is it 10 months? Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? So it's important to know those things starting out. Otherwise, you're going to get donors bent sideways, because you might set the world's greatest ask amounts, but then if you cram them onto a card where the monthly looks like an installment, every donor is going to feel like, oh, I caught you. Your math doesn't add up. So you got to make sure you know what you're doing. And that really leads us to the biggest lesson of all, is that rounding might be the hardest part of this whole thing, right? So we've spent so much time, what are the data points we look at to set ask amounts? How much more can you increase in ask? How much can you invite somebody to give? When do you get diminishing returns? All the nerdy stuff on ask amounts. And honestly, that was hard. But Andrew, would you agree that like the actual rounding the numbers so they don't look weird might be the hardest part?
Yeah, and I don't think, this would be a whole different webinar on rounding and how it works. And
for the Excel
we
nerds
could do
out
a
there.
workshop sometime on how to do it.
So give us a sense of why is it hard why can't we just round everything to the nearest zero if we're setting an ask string? Why can't we just do normal, have Excel round it and get rid of the decimals?
Because well, first the numbers, how they look does matter. So if you're putting out odd looking ask amounts, it's going to look strange. The donor's going to notice it. So you have to take that into consideration. But then also, if you're doing a true installment, a monthly installment, you have to make sure the numbers add up and they don't look strange and odd. So there's a lot of different factors that go into this.
And there's nothing more manual, depending on what the client and depending on how you set your ask amounts. The lower the numbers, like we kept running into that issue where, let's say you round it to the nearest 1 or to the nearest 5 or whatever it is, you'd end up with ask strings at the lower end that are like $15, $20, $20, $30, because it rounded it, and 2 of the asks were close enough that it rounded it to the same numeral.
Yeah.
And then we got into the nerdiness of, okay, so small amounts you can round to this, and larger amounts you can round to this, but do you want it to the nearest 100 or the nearest 500? And it just depends, the larger numbers that we're talking about. So I don't have a more elegant way to put this on the screen other than to say it's really hard. So when you're banging your head against the wall in Excel, we understand. What are the formulas that you need for the Excel nerds on the line?
So there's a lot of rounding formulas you can use. So ceiling, floor, round up, round down. And then my favorite is the mround function, where
that's the letter M and then the word round.
Yep. And then it basically sets a multiple. So say that you have, you want 12 monthly installments. So you do multiples of 12. So you can round that. But then again, once you get into the higher numbers, they start to look funny. So then maybe you want to change that mround to 60. So anything that's divisible by 60, which is also divisible by 12. So it gets funny as you go down the numbers. So you have all these different exceptions that need to put into it as you go through to make sure that the numbers all add up and look pleasant on a pledge card.
There's 10 people in this webinar who are nodding their heads vigorously, and there's 190 who are like, oh my goodness, stop talking about this already.
What's going on?
All right, so it's hard to round. We feel your pain. When we built AskGenius, we spent months and months of tweaking to get it look just right. One of the final things we're going to talk about, anchoring bias. I know we're running on time, so I'll go quick here. When you're doing your fundraising, understand what anchoring bias is. anchoring bias is why they put the MSRP on a car that you go to buy, right? They want to anchor you to a number so that anything less than that number is going to look reasonable. It's the same reason when you go shopping, you feel great. Oh my goodness, it was 60% off. I feel so proud of this purchase, even though that 60% off is exactly what it would cost the day before at the sticker price. It's just, it's anchoring people to a number. There's all sorts of exciting psychological experiments that have been done. I share this just because it's fun to know, and you can think about it as you're writing your letters. One example, a huge experiment done, 2 groups of people. They started off by asking these groups, what are the last 2 digits of your social security number? And they'd look at the folks who had a low number, right? Maybe the last 2 digits were 11. And then maybe the other group, somebody says 92. So that was the first step, just asking everybody, what are the last 2 digits of your social security number? And then they asked those same people, how much do you estimate this bottle of French wine costs? Okay, how much is this bottle of wine? And what they found was fascinating, and this has been repeated in a whole bunch of other experiments. The folks who had a low number for their social security number, completely arbitrary, estimated about 30 bucks. The people who had a high number for their social security number estimated about $85. And this is the case not just in this famous French wine experiment. They had one where they had like a Wheel of Fortune type game, but the wheel was rigged, so it always landed on either 10 or 65. And then they would compare, so people would get the results, 10 or 65. And then they would ask those people a question they couldn't possibly know the answer to. It was like, what percentage of countries in Africa are part of the UN? And the people that had a 10 would estimate something low, like around 25. The people that got the 65 would answer something high, like 50, give or take. And this is repeated in study after study after study and experiment after experiment. We as humans will take whatever piece of data or number that we had just received, and it impacts our decisions, right? Whether or not it's you'll notice it's completely arbitrary. Your social security number has no bearing on what you think this bottle of French wine costs, but that's just the way that our minds work. So we share that because it's fun and because you have to keep it in mind when you're writing your letters. There's an exception to that rule when it comes to fundraising. We have studied, this is one of the first big experiments we did along with the pledge cards. Ask strings. We get asked a lot, should we go high to low or should we go low to high? Andrew, do you remember what we need to do?
You go low to high.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I will admit, when I first answered this, when this question came across, I thought for sure it was high to low.
Same. Yep. I would have thought the same thing, but we've done it before. So when we are designing pledge cards, start low, go to high. We have a whole webinar on pledge cards, so I won't get into the psychology behind that. What did Fundraise Up, one of the vendors, an online giving vendor, what did they say about online?
So on mobile and online, they say to go from high to low in vertical order. So it's highest at top and then lowest at the bottom.
So printed pledge cards, low to high, left to right, online donation forms, high to low, top to bottom. I'm going to bring up something controversial. Since we're talking about ask amounts and pledge cards, you should all stop asking for credit card information on the donation form. Don't do it. Instead, use that real estate to send them online. The reasons, again, just for interest of time, I won't go into a bunch of it here. I must have gotten very verbose in our earlier slides. PCI compliance, when they go online, they're more likely to make a recurring gift. It's easier to process the gifts. You're guaranteed to get an email when they give online. We have helped move really big organizations over to this, right? So they were nervous about taking that credit card form off of the pledge card. They trusted us. We just put a big URL there and we didn't lose any donors. And now we have many, many more recurring gift donors and folks that we can email because they did give online. If you want to know more about pledge card design, we have what we call the world's greatest pledge card. We have it in a Word document template form, so you can mess around with it on your own to your heart's content. We can share the link on that if you're interested. We can also email it out after. Okay, so where do we go from here other than answering questions? Hopefully by now you take our word for it that setting the right ask amount is really important. Okay, it's a fact, whether you believe it or not, it is a fact that it is important that you set the right ask amounts for your donors. If that is true, then what follows is that you should do a better job of setting ask amounts of your organization. To do that, there's 2 things you can do. You can do it by yourself and we will help you. So if you're going to set ask amounts on your own, check your email later today. We're going to send an email out and it will have a link to this recording, the link to the slides. We'll give you, some templates that you can download, links to our prior webinars. all sorts of fun stuff. Okay. So you can do all this on your own. If when Andrew was talking about the M round formula and the ceiling formula in Excel, if you got excited, that is for you. Go set your own ask amounts, customize it, make them great. If that doesn't sound like you and you want to get some help, we'd love to show you how AskGenius works. I'm not going to go through a huge demo today. Just know that AskGenius is the tool that takes everything we've talked about and does it for you, right? All of the rounding tweaks and the algorithms and the first-time donor stuff, we built it into an app selfishly that we built for ourselves, for our clients, but then we realized that this is something that other nonprofits could use. You can play around with it. You can set aggressive ask amounts or nice and easy, swing through the fences. If you want to learn more about that, this is all the sales pitch you'll ever get. If you want to learn more, I'll put a poll up here. And you can tell us. We'll launch that. Okay, so I'll let that run for a minute. So if you want to know more about AskGenius, of course, we'd love to tell you about it. We even have a demo coming up soon. Andrew, is that right? We've got a demo, I think, next week.
Next Tuesday.
Okay, so if you want, let us know here and we'll follow up with you. Otherwise, I'll put a slide up and you can join us for the demo next Tuesday. I'll let that run for a minute here. Andrew, let's look at the Q&A part. What any questions that we should get to?
Lots of great questions. So going back to the start, so do you recommend that we use the ask cards or do we put the amount we want on the letter as well? We talked about that. So again, unless it's a meaningful ask, don't put the amount in the letter.
Yep.
Let the pledge card do the asking for you. Let the letter be a heartfelt message from the organization.
Yep, love it. Mackenzie asks, are those moderate numbers in the first string? Yes. I think we're talking about the slide where we had like the 10% and then what we considered like, moderate and aggressive. So yes, that was the answer to that.
Therese asked, do you recommend tracking the ask arrays that you use for donors so you'll be able to see that a $20 donor after several years never gives $100?
Yes.
Yes, 100%. Track what you're asking your donors to give. That is incredibly helpful information. Good way to indicate what you should ask for in the future. Test out success rates of asking for certain amounts. 100%. Always track, always record, always test. All of those things.
Track everything. That's the most fun part about being a fundraiser is that you have this place. You have a laboratory. If you're at a large enough organization, you can test out a theory, and then as long as you track it, use your package codes and your appeal codes, you can find out exactly what worked and what didn't. So that's a great question. What else, Mr. Menke? I'm trying to jump through here.
Do you place your target ask amount as the first, second, or third amount in the ask string?
Yes. There's a right answer to this.
Yeah, your target should be the first ask amount. And don't get me wrong. So you definitely want them to select that first ask amount. So if you're doing from lowest to highest, they go with the lowest. That's great. But even if they don't select that first ask amount, at least that first ask is leading them towards raising their gift from last year. So even if they don't check that first box, you're at least lifting their gift from last year. And that should be your goal, is to lift their gift amount.
And this is also just about not doing anything that's going to cost you money. So we worked with a client recently that put, I think their target ask was in the middle and they gave them a lower one in the first one, and a whole bunch of people took them up on their offer to give less. so it's fine. Make the first one your ask and then go increase from there.
I got a question from Catherine. She's asking about wealth research. So there's RE's Wealth Engine. Do you have any recommendations for other wealth research companies? So
as long as if you're a Razor's Edge user already, you have pretty much what you need is baked into NXT. You have target analytics and that next ask amount is baked in. That's everything you need to run a normal development shop. If you're going into a big campaign, then maybe you're going to buy Research Point and really get into it. But Research Point is not worth it to you unless you have the manpower to actually go through and look at those individual donor portfolios. Likewise, Donor Search is great. They've been a partner of ours for years and we've used them. They're comparable tools. So we like Donor Search. We like Target Analytics. Wealth Engine we used to use, we don't really use anymore. I've heard people say good things about iWave. I've never worked with them myself. But I think they're all, as long as you look at it the right way, that they're tools, they're good indicators, they're not something that you can take as gospel and drop in and ask them out. Let's do 2 more here. I know folks they're being generous with their time. Any other ones in there, Andrew, that we really need to get through here today?
Let's see. Can you use AskGenius if you don't have Blackbaud? It's a good
Great
question.
question. Yes. So more than half of the users of AskGenius are not on Blackbaud. If you're on Blackbaud, the benefit is that it all syncs automatically, that you can download it in the Blackbaud marketplace, and then it sucks in all of your donor data, and then you can choose what strategy you want to apply, and it all just kind of works. If you don't have Blackbaud, if you're on Salesforce or Bloomerang or Virtuous, you just do an export to a CSV file, and then you import that file into AskGenius, and then you run with it from there. So like I said, more than half the users are not on Razor's Edge. That's fine. We built it as a tool just to help us do what we want to do for our clients. And then we realized, holy cow, this is pretty powerful and pretty useful. So now you've got hospitals and high schools and foundations all over the country, and even some in Canada, that are using AskGenius to set ask amounts. Would love to help more folks with that as well. Let me make sure I've got another so that people know what's coming up next. So a lot of folks have been on our webinars, and thank you for coming to them. If you're new, just know we do topics like this all the time. The next one we have coming up in March, we're going to talk about cleaning up your donor database with the famous Austin Brown, our whip smart data guru here at PSG. She's moderately famous in the donor database community. So everybody's excited to hear what Austin says about cleaning up your database. If you want to hear about webinars we're doing, you can go to the AskGenius website. You can sign up for our newsletter. We're always sending out notes. If we have a new research project, we'll launch a webinar and we'll put something in the newsletter about it. So that's a great spot for you to check out anything. Whether or not you're using AskGenius as a tool, just know that Andrew and myself and our team are always putting all the good stuff that we learn into that newsletter, trying to provide a lot of value for you.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of you were interested in the automation that we talked about. So that's coming up in May. We don't have the sign up just yet, so definitely subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get information about that once it becomes available.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much for folks. I apologize for running late. That was poor form. We get really into it when we're talking about setting ask amounts and donor research. So thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, feel free, my emails and Andrew's as well on the website. Shoot us an email. We will always hop on a call and answer emails for folks that have additional questions. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week. If you're in Minnesota, enjoy that snow that's coming, right?
Yeah, can't wait. Getting the muscles all loosened up for shoveling, and
that's right. You got to make sure to stretch. You're no spring chicken anymore, Andrew.
all
Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
right, thanks everyone.